Hello and welcome to ELMO's latest webinar. Let's talk performance, how AI is changing the game. It's wonderful you've all logged on and joined us today. As we are meeting from various locations, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all meeting. For me, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present as early innovators and acknowledge their significant contributions to science and technology throughout land, water, and culture. So before we start, a couple of housekeeping things. You guys are in listen only mode, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. This webinar is being recorded and it will be sent to you after today. The session will run for about 45 minutes. And if we do have time, we'll take some questions at the end. So please feel free to ask your questions as we go along. And if we don't have time, we will compile them and email them out as an FAQ summary. So you're joining us today because you're HR and business leaders curious about how AI can make your performance management systems faster, fairer, and more impactful. And hopefully you'll leave with some practical steps to integrate AI into your organization. You'll also hear data from our latest Employment Sentiment Index, or ESI. This quarterly report surveys 1,500 employees from both Australia and New Zealand. The aim is to always gauge perceptions of economic security, wellbeing metrics, and career plans, as well as any topics that we want to understand more deeply. So for this quarter, that was performance management. So today we're going to cover the challenges in the current performance management processes, AI in action, how we're using it internally and across our platform, and practical steps to help you implement it in your own organization. So let's meet our speakers. I think I just saw a sound one. Turn it up on your device. That's as far up as it goes, guys. So hopefully that's a bit better. Up first, we have Justin Mayer. Justin is ELMO's Senior Culture and Careers Manager with over 20 years experience across talent acquisition, L&D, and D&I. He's led our internal AI adoption and is driving AI and automation capability build across the business. Hi, Justin.
Thanks, Elise, and hi, everyone.
And Bree Roberts is Solutions Director at ELMO. Bree has worked in the tech industry for the last 20 years and now leads a high-performing team of solution consultants. She's been at the forefront of embedding AI in performance management with her team. So, hi, Bree.
Hi, great.
So we break the ice and let you guys tell us what's your favorite app.
Okay, well, for those who know me, I'm a big lover of Latin America. So Spanish is big for me. I've learned to learn Spanish up to about an intermediate level, but living in Australia, I don't get as many opportunities over the past few years, especially. So my favorite app is Duolingo. So hopefully people on the webinar know what that app is all about. But things I love, I'm hyper competitive. So the gamification, competing against other people, including my friends, I think is really great. The AI curation of the learning pathways is really clever. And it's a bit of fun that sort of gets you engaged day by day. You know, you've got a running streak, and being competitive, I need to make sure that I log in every day so I don't lose that streak.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great app. I'm terrible with languages, so I could probably do with downloading that. But what is my favorite app? I'm a big music buff and I love Shazam. So for those that don't know Shazam, it allows you to identify song names and artists. So if you're out and you hear a track that you really like, I'm that person who's out at dinner with their friends and I'll just kind of hear a good beat in the background and I'll kind of launch up off my chair and have my phone up into the speaker like a real weirdo. But then I'll get the artist and the track name so I can go listen to that at home later on. So it's also got this really cool feature with Spotify where you can actually then, once you've identified the track, you can then put that into your Spotify playlist. And at least we were talking earlier around how there's now a new AI DJ in Spotify, which is pretty cool and kind of topical for today, which I'm keen to try out.
And Brie, what was your last song that you Shazammed, put you on the spot?
That's a good question. It was probably about 2 weeks ago. I was, this probably says a little bit about me, but I was in a reformer Pilates class and my instructor had a really nice kind of ambient tune. So I was actually on the machine and I launched up mid-class. I went and got my phone and Shazammed, and it was Kiesmos. They're an Icelandic duo that really have some beautiful, beautiful tunes and worth checking out.
Love that. I
Mm.
love that. And I should also say, just I think on the AI front, if you also don't know a song, but you know the tune, so you're like, you can do that into Google Sound now, and it will like sometimes Google Gemini, I should say, and then that will tell you the song. So there, watch out, Shazam. Okay, guys, let's start with a quick poll. I'm going to launch this now, so you should be able to see it. Do you currently have formal performance management? Sorry, goodness. Do you currently have a formal performance management process? So let's, while you guys are answering, I'll let you know that according to our latest ESI, only 38% of Aussies and 30% of Kiwi employees have a formal and consistent PM process. So just looking at those numbers sort of changing before my eyes, it's sort of a little bit more looking on the call. We're looking about 50% of you, maybe even a bit more, have a formal and consistent process. Some of you, about a third, only partly but structured. And then a little bit less, 10%, or a bit over that, are mostly informal or no process at all. Yeah, cool. It gives us a good gauge of what I guess we're talking about today. So I'll just end that poll. And I can share the results too, so you can just see what that looks like. And so let's get started. Justin, to you, what does a traditional formal process look like? Will usually look
Yeah,
like?
I think firstly, I'm happy to see the results of the poll are a little bit higher than our employee sentiment index. Only 38% of Aussie and 30% of Kiwi employees that have a formal, consistent process. That felt quite low for me. So I'm glad to see that participants here today are more used to a formal sort of structured process. But for me, a traditional process is really a well-structured top-down system. And ideally, it connects to an organisation's strategy. So it really starts at that top. What do we stand for as a business? What do we need to achieve? And what are our goals and objectives? And then within that, you'd usually start within a goal-setting phase where you sort of help determine what are those measurements for our employees. So whether it's KPIs or OKRs, whatever terminology you might need and use. So people understand what are the required performance expectations of them for them in their roles. Many organisations operate off that sort of annual review cycle with varying cadences of check-ins, so it could be quarterly or 6 monthly, culminating in an end-of-year process where employees and managers would give themselves a bit of a rating, and then that rating would determine, what their sort of remuneration or reward or compensation outcomes might actually be.
Thanks, Justin. And Bree, from an employee perspective and as a leader of a fairly big team, what would you add?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess as a leader, I've seen really how important structure is. It gives employees clarity about expectations. It shows them how success is measured. But structure alone, it's just not enough. And if performance management is happening, say, once a year, maybe even twice, it can become a bit of a tick in the box exercise. And it's a lot of pressure that we're putting on managers to have to retain information. So we're thinking about perhaps looking back 12 months or 6 months and trying to remember, what's gone on. So what I've found is like people really want these days, they want more frequent check-ins, they want constructive feedback and something that's going to help support their growth. And I think this is probably not just something that I'm seeing or that we're seeing. This was present in a survey that we recently did, our employee sentiment survey. And in that index, that showed that 50% of Australians and also 60% of our Kiwi friends, they aren't receiving enough feedback or getting it as frequently as they want. And so, which I thought that was a really interesting stat that came from that survey.
I agree. And I think that, well, I just saw a comment come up in the chat there about, for them, performance management is more about, dealing with poor behavior. And I guess like if you feel like an employee isn't receiving enough feedback, are you providing that feedback when they're demonstrating like, that kind of behavior to kind of help manage that? And that's what a formal and consistent process can sometimes mitigate. So Justin, maybe if you could expand on that a little bit, like what risks you'd see if a business doesn't have an effective process?
Yeah, I think firstly, the legal and compliance risk. So without having clearly articulated and sort of well documented system, with clear goals and objectives, it's really difficult to the comment in the chat around, poor behaviour and poor performance. How do you actually manage that if you don't have those clear expectations set and people don't know what that actually looks like? That'd be really hard for you to manage as an organisation or to justify a termination. So I think businesses would potentially make themselves vulnerable to unfair dismissal claims or even claims of discrimination if they don't have a well-structured and a well-articulated process. Secondly, goes down to employee engagement as well. So we hear that, employees do want feedback. They want more of it and more regular feedback as well, both constructive and positive. So if they don't have that and they don't know, are they actually doing a good job? Is more development needed for them to meet the required performance standards? That can be a sort of a message that they're undervalued. It could lead to a reduction, I guess, in that engagement and maybe even team morale. And really, that could lead to that disengagement and a loss of productivity. So what we've seen is when people are disengaged, there's more likely to be higher staff turnover. There can be things that play out like presenteeism, where people come to work, but they're just not even engaging or trying to actually be productive or contributing to the organisational's goals. And this loss of productivity can then increase the strain on other team members who are having to pick up some of that slack. And lastly, I think the misalignment with business goals. I think if individual employees, if their efforts aren't really tied and directionally heading towards the company's strategic objectives, there's a significant amount of wasted time and energy focused on the wrong things. So this could lead to an inability to execute on the organisational strategy. So they're probably the three things that I would call out.
Yeah, very good. And Bree, have you ever worked in a business that hasn't had a performance management process, and what risks stand out from your perspective as an employee?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty fortunate throughout my career. I've worked at larger organizations, LinkedIn, Thomson Reuters, Dun& Bradstreet, and so for the most part, we've had performance management processes or used some type of software to track that process. But I appreciate that's not the case for everyone. And I actually had a chat with my team about this during the week just to kind of gauge what their experience is. And we kind of thought about it in two folds. From an employee's perspective, on employee side, it can feel like the business really isn't investing in you. They're not investing in your development. And that can lead to some disengagement, a lack of trust. And then on the flip side, there's a clear correlation between retention from the business's point of view. So if people leave, it's usually because they don't feel recognized, supported, or developed. And again, we're seeing this in the data that's been highlighted. And I think it was 1 in 10 employees had reported not having a formal process in place, and 8% aren't even sure if one exists. And so if employees don't know that a process is in place, that's a pretty major concern.
Yeah, and one thing I'm proud about, I guess, here at ELMO is that we've been working really hard over the past few years, is to drive the engagement with the process as well. So our employees walk away with something tangible for them. They understand where they sit, they understand the areas that they need to develop and grow in to sort of put them on the direction to their career aspirations. And this financial year just gone, we actually had 100% completion of our performance management process for the first time. So it was something that we're really proud of.
Yes, it is pretty. It's actually the first time I've participated in such a formal process. Like, I've come from organisations that have particularly been very ad hoc, so it's been interesting to be in one that's very consistent and quarterly check-ins and so forth. So you've both just highlighted why it's so important and why it should be a priority for HR leaders today. Even when processes exist, though, they're often far from perfect. So, Bree, can you talk to us about some of the major challenges or pain points with that traditional process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're finding right now is in terms of business structure, they're moving towards more of a flat structure, and what that's leading to is managers having more direct reports. And so teams are getting larger, and we're all pretty familiar with the term "do more with less." And so there's a lot more pressure being put on managers to have a more, I say, admin heavy burden. So managers are spending more time writing performance appraisals than actually having quality conversations with their staff members. I know back in my career, there was a point where I had 13 direct reports, and it was taking me around 3 to 5 hours to do performance reviews, and this was very much in the traditional process. And so you can imagine the time that would spend to kind of get through all of those alongside your job, because we still have the responsibility of doing our day-to-day job as well. So that what I would say is one of the key or the main challenges. Next up, we've kind of have this like one size fits all mentality. Traditional performance appraisals can be seen as almost like a template of here's one templatized way of working. Let's roll that out across all of the organization or all of the business. But I'm fully supportive of templates. I think they're great and extremely useful up until a point. But we still want to make sure that we're capturing people's individual skills, and we're reflecting different roles and strengths. And so, I really believe people still want to be seen, they want to be understood, they want to be heard. And so even if we have a template up until a point and then we individualize certain components. And I would say at ELMO, we do this in our templates. We have a development section, and that section's open so that the employee and the manager can work on specific areas together, as opposed to, that top-down approach of this is the development for all of the company. So I'd say that one size fits all is a challenge. And then the last one I'd say is really around low engagement. People still can see this process as a bit of a compliance exercise or that kind of checkbox exercise. And people really need to be brought into the why. Why are we doing this process? Then there's a whole raft of reasons. Someone in the chat mentioned performance improvement. It might be retention. It might be to have a look at remuneration. It might be to align, your corporate strategy with your departmental OKRs. Or it might be for individual development. There's so many reasons, but we really need to make sure that we are very clear and communicating these out, so people are connecting in with that reason and seeing it broader than just another task on their to-do list. But I will say we speak to a lot of customers as well, and we have a lot of customers that are coming from either no process or no system. And for them, one of their biggest challenges isn't so much engagement, it's implementation. How do we roll out this process and ensure that we've mapped out, the future state of what we want this to look like, and got that right. So we've got that as kind of a stage. Once we've then rolled out that system, how do we then ensure we've got adoption from our staff members and engagement? How do we ensure that they're on board? Have we done that change management piece? And then lastly, once an organization has kind of moved through that phase, are we getting the outcomes that we have, that we initially set up when we were thinking about this idea and this rollout, the purpose of the project? So I guess depending on where an organization is in their kind of stages, it could be anything from implementation, engagement, all the way through to business outcomes. But I would say, this is why AI is really exciting. It is helping us tackle some of these outcomes, especially when it's coming to reducing admin and really helping us focus on those quality conversations rather than the paperwork.
Yeah, thanks, Bri. I think that you've just highlighted quite a lot of challenges, and also even I think maybe addressing some of the things I'm seeing pop up in the webinar in terms of the language around like performance management frameworks and performance appraisals and so forth, and what people may even expect out of these things. So let's go into the AI topic. I'm going to launch another poll. It's maybe only relevant for those who do have a fairly consistent process, but anyone feel free to comment. Basically, is your organization already integrating AI as part of your performance management framework, or even, I guess, like your business in general, but we are specifically talking about performance today. So we are looking at about, I would say, I'm trying to do math, sorry guys, about just under half who say not yet, but we're planning to, or about 39% who not yet and no plans to. So that's interesting. Quite not a lot at all who've actually fully integrated. So that's like very interesting. And I think probably maybe reflects what we're seeing in the market too. There's a lot of curiosity about AI and how to use it and the drive to use it, but it's still really early days for most organizations. So I'm going to end the poll and I'll just share the results so you guys can have a look. So let's go to Justin, because Justin, we were in that same position not too long ago. We weren't using AI. Can you take us back to when we first introduced it internally and what did that look like?
Yeah, for sure. Where we are today is definitely a very different place to where we were last year. If I reflect on those initial conversations around integrating AI and automation into our daily sort of workflows and cadences. But I think there was definitely a healthy level of skepticism. There was so many unknowns, and so many of us didn't really understand or know where it was going to be heading. So I think we very much took a risk management sort of approach. There's always a healthy tension when it comes to innovation and risk, and I think we definitely leaned on the risk side as a starting point. Some of the things that I think that were really important that have set the foundations to allow us to accelerate to where we are today, I think was building AI policies to start with. So really ensuring that everyone across the business understood what it was and how to use AI in a safe, responsible, and ethical way. So I think that was the first thing that we did, which was really well received. Obviously, information security is really important for us as an organisation. So anytime we're looking or exploring some potential AI and automation tools, we do a deep security review from many different angles and perspectives to ensure that's also safe and secure for us to leverage. We use G Suite, so we're on the Google platforms, and so we're introducing Gemini, which is their Gen AI tool. And prior to giving anyone access to that, people actually had to complete a training object as part of our LMS. So before they got access, they had to really understand what it was all about, understand some of the pitfalls, some of the things they needed to focus on, things like hallucinations, and not just taking what is returned at face value, to make sure that we're still using, critical thinking and professional judgment in the data and information that you're seeing. So there's some of the key things to set us up to start with. And then from an adoption perspective, we ran a sort of half-day Educate day, which had an AI and automation focus. And that was really around the key organizational tools that we're using that have AI and automation, ensuring that everyone then had the skills to be able to use them for greatest impact. If we're investing in the tools, we need to make sure they're actually being used. So when it comes to AI, a lot of it's around behavior change and mindset shift. And I think that first Educate Day really helped break down some of the barriers and fear for some of our employees and allowed them to get stuck in and hands-on and playing around with the different tools at their disposal.
Yeah, and I thought like Educate Day was such a great initiative run by the team. And I think one of the things, just touching on what Justin said, is we also leveraged the expertise within the business. I had one of my team members, Chris, he's pretty proficient in AI, and he ran one of the sessions and worked with Justin and his team to make sure that he was sharing his information. And so we looked internally for some of that knowledge as well, because there's a lot of early adopters, around, and it's just a matter of finding them and helping to champion them to then share their knowledge more broadly.
100%. As someone who, I wouldn't say I wasn't not an adopter, but I certainly didn't understand, I guess, the why we would use it so broadly. And the Educate Day really was so interesting and helpful to help just get started with the tools and even create custom gems in Gemini to the ways you use those is you can do them in ChatGPT as well. I guess all the LLMs, you can do them to really help you with your work. We've obviously been introducing AI internally. We've also been embedding it into our platform for customers. So Bree, can you talk us a little bit through the broader AI strategy and how it connects to performance management, what's in place today and where it's headed to next?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And you can tell we're really excited about how AI is going to transform and augment, these traditional HR processes. I think everyone in this call is pretty Pretty excited about it. But I think one thing for us is being really intentional about how we use AI and always taking it from the lens of a human experience with human outcomes. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with the term human in the loop. This is something that I recently came across after speaking with our product team, but it's a really big principle that we use or apply here at ELMO. And that just means AI supports and assists, but it never actually replaces that human element. And I think that's a really big point for us to share and communicate, and so that our customers know, what is our strategy and what is our angle here. So when we're thinking about our performance management, the real value comes from quality conversations. And we've kind of touched on this, but this is what's important, that human element between a manager and their employee. And AI should never take that away. I mean, I don't know about you, but how many people want to have a performance review done by a computer? I certainly don't. I want that human connection, and I imagine a lot of people do. So, right, I see a big no, Karen. Absolutely. But right now with our performance module, we're giving customers the option to enable what we call an AI assistant. And that's really in our text editing fields, because we do want to support managers and employees, and we can support them in things like notes and summaries and different areas. But importantly, it's not about generating new content or replacing kind of those interactions or reflections, but more helping managers kind of save time and be clearer about the feedback that they're providing. So kind of like data in, data out. The information that you put in, you can then tweak and change, but it's not going to reinvent the wheel for you, and it's not going to give a review of your employee based on, some data that it is hosting, based on other people. So there's still that kind of human interaction that's required. And when we're thinking about what features that, we're providing, there's the ability to improve writing. So things like polishing up your grammar, your readability, making statements shorter or longer. So you might need to summarize core messaging, or expand on extra content. So I know when I write my performance appraisals, I'm someone that reads a lot of different sources, and then I just start typing and I use AI to help summarize, what it is that I want, and just to show me some trends. But the information is coming from me. It's what I know about my team. And so keeping it personalized. But another thing we're also doing is simplifying language. So making feedback easier to understand. Now, these might seem really simple, but they are powerful tools to kind of help you with that admin burden, mostly so managers can focus on the conversation itself, because, as we've touched on, like that's what really matters, and that's what's really important when we're thinking about incorporating AI into the piece. And I think, just touching on the more broader topic, we're really lucky at ELMO. Things are going to get really exciting for us because Joseph Lyons, our CEO, like he's genuinely committed to an AI strategy. So much so that he's actually on a plane right now over to the US to attend an AI summit, funnily enough. So that was really well timed and on point for this webinar. But he's really supported us mobilizing our internal teams, mobilizing departments across the business to back and support, the AI strategy that we're putting forward. So for us, it's not just a product or technology driven initiative, it's actually a whole of company focus. And I think that's been one of the reasons we've been able to make such big strides and move so quickly in this space. And I guess, when we're thinking about like what's the exciting part, like what's coming up for us, it's really around competency frameworks and personalizing career pathways. These are some feedback that has also come from our customers, and these are things that our customers have asked for. So it's really exciting that we're now able to invest. And I'm imagining where AI can help our customers really tailored recommended learning. We can tailor experiences, exposure activities, so employees can then start to build skills for the future that is needed. So we're not just thinking about today; we're actually preparing them for what's coming. And And I think that's really where the power lies. It's not just about making performance management faster and fairer, but it's actually about enabling people to grow in a deeper, personalized way based on what their development needs are. So, that's really exciting for us. But I would say the second component to that, and this is a little bit hot off the press, if I will, but we're investing a big portion into AI analytics, and so this is going to be a new reporting tool for us where we're aiming to like remove a lot of the complexity that we can find from reporting and enabling our customers to not need technology skills to be able to kind of get data quickly. And the idea is that you'll be able to start to type in questions, and any questions that you want, if the data is in our system, you'll be able to pull the responses. So tying that back to a performance review, it's a quantitative conversation that needs qualitative data, the other way around. And so what we're doing is we're going to make it much easier for managers to be able to pull information so that we've got those success metrics, so that we can back up and substantiate, the goals that we're putting in place with actual data from the system as well. So there's two really exciting initiatives to watch out for if you're a customer. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much, Brie. I've obviously, like, we've spoken to Brie, previously to this. I just love hearing her talk because she gets so excited and so passionate about it. And, if you know Brie, she's a real people person. And I think touching on the career pathways, we've all heard about the fear of AI replacing jobs. And according to our latest ESI, about a third of employees fear their role might be replaced in the next 5 years. Justin, I know you've done a lot of work in both change management and learning and development programs to help with this reskilling. Can you tell us a little bit about that rollout at ELMO and how employees have responded?
Yeah, for sure. So I think firstly, it's really important to acknowledge that there's no blueprint to tell us how to actually do it. So for us, it's been really important to be speaking to other organisations going through a similar journey, understanding what they've done, learning from those, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and thinking about how that would apply and whether it is relevant and applicable to our business context. So I think that was really helpful as a starting point. Secondly is to engage with experts as well, because I'm definitely no AI and automation expert. So I need to draw on people with that sort of expertise and specialisation to help sort of craft and directionally where we need to go. So I think that's the first thing to call out. Really encourage everyone just to engage with other businesses to find out what they're doing to see whether that's relevant for you. So there's quite a long list I'm going to cover here, but there's quite a few things. We've really accelerated, our focus on AI and automation as we've come into this financial year. So if we think about our context last year, it was more around, it was a nice to have if people are engaging with it. So we're giving the time, the space to experiment and play around with the approved tools. But as we've gone into this financial year, it's a must have. Everyone needs to be engaging with AI and automation. And some of the things that have really helped with that change management piece is we have an organisational AI and automation charter and vision, which Joseph Lyons launched along with the leadership team at our first town hall this financial year. And so that really clearly articulated what we were trying to achieve as an organisation, especially over this 12 months. So I think that really resonated and gave people that visibility and transparency around what that vision looked like. Secondly, we refreshed one of our existing innovation-oriented values, but to craft that value, we engaged our employees to do so. So we wanted to really push the boundaries even further. So we really landed on a value called reimagine what's possible, and we felt that embodied, as we go into this financial year, what we want to achieve. So every day we want people to be thinking about how can we make our lives even more effective, more efficient, greater impact for ourselves and for our customers. So there's two things we've done. We have embedded OKRs is the terminology we use, but you might use KPIs if you do have a performance framework. So every single employee has an objective that they need to be measured against this financial year. We want them to engage in the design and definition of that so they buy into it. So I think that's a new thing that we'll see how that plays out over this year. I've seen some messages around competency frameworks in the chat there. So we actually created an AI proficiency competency, which is a core one for the organisation. And that allowed a bit of transparency and consistency of language around what are the expectations that we see for our employees, depending on what role level they are within the business. And by having that defined, that then allowed us to anchor all of our learning and development programs off that. Now, we're still in the early parts and phases of this, so I can't tell you exactly how it's gone, but we do have our first foundation-oriented AI and automation session next week, and we have an expert from ARI who sits on their advisory panel from an AI perspective in delivering that training. So that's when I talk about getting some experts to help bring their knowledge and expertise in, so then we can leverage that. And the idea is to build on that platform. So making sure we've got a foundational component first, then progressing into advanced to then move into a transformative impact. So that's the idea with that. And other things from a change management perspective is we have a community of practice. So Bree mentioned Chris in her team as an example. What we've looked at is who are the early adapters, who are the people that are really engaging and experimenting with AI, and bringing them together as a community on a fortnightly basis where we can learn off each other, we can build our collective intelligence, and really help sort of drive and be those change champions out within the business as well, because we know that then has a greater impact when there's more, and we're democratizing, I guess, that approach. We also have an organizational communication channel. We use Slack here. So we've got an AI and automation oriented one, and that's really around sharing people's wins when it comes to AI and automation. So what are the use cases they're seeing it for, and then how can other people then grab that, take that away, and then apply that themselves. So again, really trying to get that collective impact. And then lastly, which is really, really important, is how do we reward and recognize people who are actually jumping in and getting amongst it? So I think we've really seen, there's always a spectrum of people when it comes to change adoption, from your early adopters to your laggers. And interestingly, some of the people that were probably the most skeptical to start with, and now some of the people that are really pushing the boundaries when it comes to AI and automation innovation.
Yeah, I love the CEO awards, the AI awards. It's so nice to be able to recognize, people that are really stepping into uncharted waters and putting themselves out there, and then also sharing their knowledge. I think from an employee perspective, though, how have they responded? When I've spoken, like, I guess my team, when I've spoken to my team, I've got such a broad spectrum. I've got some people in there that are, they're leaving work, they're going home, they're opening up their fridge, they're looking at the ingredients, they're putting all those ingredients into something like ChatGPT and Gemini, and they're asking, AI what they should have for dinner, and they're getting a recipe back, and then they're cooking that food. So, they're the ones that are really far down the track. And I've got to the point that somebody in my team is also using it to count macros, or asking AI how many macros are in their food. So, yeah, they're using it to that next level. But I've also got some people that are a little bit apprehensive about using AI. And funnily enough, like these are the people that aren't sometimes like actually some really smart and intelligent people in my team. And they can do a lot of what AI can do. They can do it quite well, whether it's, construct sentences, write paragraphs, look at trends. Like they can do a lot of that stuff. And so for them, I think it's really around just finding, well, how is AI going to supplement what they're already doing, and not replace, the skills that are already there and are already working fine. And I think it's just about working with the individuals at their own level, in terms of where they're at and what we can do to support as opposed to replace. Because if somebody's already doing something well, there is no need to get AI involved to change it up and kind of take that away from them. So I think it's just really around working with the individuals to decide or determine, what their needs are, and then go from there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you can't expect anyone to be all on the same playing field when it comes to any kind of adoption of any technology, no matter what, like part of the business you're in and so forth. So I think it's also, like to Justin's point before, some of the things that they're putting in place around like between foundational and transformative, helps establish like where people are and can bring them on that journey so they can start at foundational and end up at transformative. And that's kind of part of the exciting thing. And we went through that list of what we've done in the last 12 months. It's crazy to think of like, how much we've achieved in such a short time. So, Justin, what advice would you give to the leaders here today who want to start implementing AI in performance frameworks, and what should they avoid?
Yeah, I think firstly would be to bring people on the journey. So don't just do things to your employees. I think that's when you're going to get potential pushback. But if you engage them with them around the what, the why, and the how, I think you're more likely to bring people on the journey and get greater adoption and engagement with wherever you're heading. I think we talked about at the beginning about governance really matters. So make sure before you go too fast and go really hard, is that you've got the right structures, the right policies, the right risk frameworks in place to give you greater confidence and to build that trust to make sure that it is utilised and leveraged in a safe, secure, and responsible way. So they're two critical things. I think what we've seen is just the collective buy-in from the leadership team and the consistent communication that is happening to reinforce like where we're going and that vision. I think that's really important. And lastly is, go small before you go big. So don't try to, turn your business upside down and become AI first or forward, in the first instance. Pick some controlled pilot projects that you can sort of run to then see, engage how people are actually engaging with it. What's their level of, are they still skeptical? Are they actually more advanced on that change scale than you expected? To then help you put a bit of a package together around how would you then manage a bigger, larger scale project. So I think there's some of the key tips that I would give.
Yeah, nice. And Bree, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, like Justin covered a good list. I think from my side, just to start small, don't try and overhaul everything as Justin kind of touched on. Don't force people to use AI. FOMO is real. People have fear of missing out. And I know, some people can be slow to jump onto AI, but eventually, I think everyone will kind of find their way or find their place in that space. My team have really enjoyed using AI for recommendations. We have a very big recommendation culture and giving each other feedback or passing feedback into colleagues. And so that's been something small that we've started on. But I would say be transparent, explain how AI is being used in your organization. Like if you're a leader, talk about what you're doing. That then gives people permission to do the same. AI isn't something that we need to be hiding behind closed doors. And let your teammates or your team kind of see that you're supporting this initiative, because ultimately it's saving you time. And so I think it's something to be proud of, or something that you're getting on board with. But keep things personal would be the last thing I'd say. Don't disconnect and don't expect AI to do your job. Let it enable you to do your job, and don't use it as a replacement. People want connection, they want community, they want human interaction. So let's make sure we still have that human touch.
Yeah, beautiful. We are getting to the end. I know there's lots of questions coming through, and I know our webinar admin has said we will collate a lot of resources, get back to you, send answers. There's a lot of different, like really good questions, and we want to make sure we have the time to answer those properly. So do note that we've seen them, we will respond. We've got one. I've got one final question, and then we'll wrap up. But so I guess to you both. What skills or capabilities should HR leaders be building now to prepare for an AI-enabled future?
I thought this was a perfect question to actually ask AI. And so I feel like I've gone with the AI approach, and I think Justin probably will add something a bit more personal. But I did pop this into ChatGPT and got back AI literacy and data fluency, human AI collaboration skills, ethics, governance, and responsible AI, strategic workforce planning, change management and communication, and lastly, human-centered leadership. So I'm glad that the bots are thinking of us as well, and we've got a lot of skills that we can work with them together on.
Yeah, brilliant. Justin, did you want to add anything before we wrap?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to refer, I guess, it was a combined report back from last year with the Queensland University of Technology and ARI that really highlighted, I guess, while AI is really becoming more prevalent in Australian HR and New Zealand HR as well, that there's a significant gap between awareness and effective implementation. And so what it explicitly stated was that there's a lack of sufficient AI skills, in being able to not just understand how to use the tools, but to be also then be able to create the right policies, govern the systems that you're creating, and really ensure that AI is sort of used and leveraged in a responsible and transparent way. So I think the message for me from that report was that as HR practitioners, we need to make sure that we're investing in ourselves. And the more we invest in ourselves, that will put us in a better position to help guide our businesses and also build credibility and be able to influence really at the leadership level.
Thanks, Justin. And thanks to you both for making the time today. And a huge thank you to all of you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Like I said, we've seen your questions. We will be coming back with lots of resources and maybe expanding on a few of the things that you thought you'd like to hear more on. So thanks so much. We are going to be doing another webinar in a few weeks on how AI can unlock better decision making around that analytics tool. So if anyone who wants to join that, keep an eye on your inbox. If you have time to do a quick poll for us on how you found today, helps us prepare content for the next one, that would be really wonderful. And thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day.